Hey, what's going on? This is the OG Kickoff, a Double Down and Next Round media production. I am Connor O'Gara. Will, I beefed up. It's been a minute since I've done like an I beefed up intro. When people say I beefed up, they assume that beef means mess, like I messed up, right? Like the context, I don't need to add anything to that.
I've never heard anyone say that but you. So to be honest, it could mean anything in the outside world. But in our context, it's that you messed up.
Yeah. I think Alan says it in Hangover. Or maybe he says I fudged up. That's what he says. I think he does. I did not beef up by declaring Auburn is my personal current leader for the dud of the decade discussion. Your current leader is Nebraska. Again, this is all very fluid. I heard from many people on that, by the way. Very, very strong social media response on all of that. But listening back, I beefed up because I said that Purdue had never won a national title. Well, they've got 3. Purdue's got 3 national titles.
Yeah. The hatred runs deep in your veins. You just counted 3, Daddy.
One of which even happened in the 21st century, so that's cool. Men's golf, 1961, Kennedy administration. Who could forget? My bad. That's hand up. That's on me. Women's hoops, 99. That's the most egregious one. Should have had that on my radar. My bad. My fault. Women's golf, 2010, while I was in college, wherein Purdue slander was a little bit more prevalent in my life. Should have had that one as well. So forgot about that. That is entirely on me. Purdue fans, do not give us 1-star reviews because I forgot about your 3 very coveted national championships. So I messed that up. And then I also meant to say that Tennessee was the dud of the decade in the 2010s. I accidentally said the 2020s. I hope enough people were able to connect the dots. I meant 2010s. And that I also messed up Rutgers being in a full share of Big Ten media revenue. They are not even in a full rev share yet. They still haven't.
I kind of alluded to that. You were like, oh yeah, they now are into that. And I was like, good for them. But that's a good reason why they're kind of cooked as well.
Yeah, so I beefed up, and for those saying like, "Oh, you forgot this team," I saw some of the comments on Instagram, and I had people that reached out like, "What about Arkansas? What about Arkansas? What about Florida State? Or like this team or that team?" And go back and listen to the podcast. That's the best I could say without getting into some crazy discussion about it. But wanted to cover it up because we want to be 100% accurate at all times and never have anything that we say ever come back to bite us.
Connor, I'm scared. Did I come out of that one clean?
I think you were good. I think you were mostly good. Oh, my audio cut out very briefly.
Okay, well now we're just staying.
If we want to talk about Will mistakes,
yes, that's fine. No, but I'm like, if it's 0 to 3, that's the all-time leader there. But yeah, no, it was a lot to cover, and I think you had a ton of notes, and I was just kind of reacting. So I think anyone who ever like yells at your radio, try to actually do a segment like this. It's very hard to prep for.
4,500 words, 13 pages of notes. Got a few things wrong. Purdue national championships. My bad on me. Okay, so we have a great pod. Great pod lined up. Roddy Jones, who talks all things college football for ESPN, SiriusXM. He's going to join us in a bit, and then we're going to close with Lad of the Week. But Will, we are sitting here past the halfway point of 2026, which, look, I'm not going to tell you that that's full-on Sunday scaries a little bit in some ways. But that does mean we are at the first Thursday, by the time people are listening to this, of the month. So it's draft day. Happy July. Last month without football until March, technically, if we're getting into week 0 stuff and preseason football, I guess. Why not? But cheers to that. That's a very, very good thing. So I thought we would draft some SEC wide receivers today. And I don't know how this is going to go. Well, this could be all over. This could be our most, draft that we've ever had, and it won't surprise me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's one of those things. This is probably, I would say wide receiver is the most offense dependent position, like in terms of your scheme and types of your game planner, because there are some guys where you're just like, hey, this guy's just in a great system. And then there's the opposite of that, a guy that's still on our board this year, Cam Coleman, we saw last year. We could tell he was a great talent, but the scheme didn't fit him. So it's one of those where you could watch a guy, catch thousands of yards, and then you kind of get to the end and you're like, was that guy just part of the system? And on the other end, it's the joke I always tell about these LSU guys in the 2010s, where it's like, you get to the NFL, it's like, whoa, this is a wide receiver that can catch passes?
You're exactly right. And it's maybe a trickier thing to predict now than it was 5-6 years ago, because last year, the 7 leading receivers in the conference were all former transfers.
That's
And
nuts.
even crazier, in 2024, the 8 leading receivers in the SEC, all former transfers. So, like, chances are a lot of these guys at the top are going to be guys that did not start off at that school. It's just now it's more rare than ever to see a receiver who wants to stay at the same school for 3 or 4 years. And I don't mean to dismiss this about the position when I say this, and it piggybacks your point. I think it's the easiest spot for teams to recruit out of the portal. And if you truly whiff at wide receiver, I think you kind of have yourself to blame. Okay. And like, that's not to say that you're going to bat 1,000. I'm not saying that, but just think of how each team carries so many different receivers. And you could go like, oh, we don't have a guy that really plays the slot very well. Let's just go get the guy from Kent State who did that really well last year. And he caught like 60 passes for 900 yards. Like, let's just go do that. We'll pay him 700 grand and we have that figured out. And on the flip side, receivers obviously have more freedom than ever to find the best situation possible. And they can go, well, wait, is there a better offense for me? Is there a better quarterback for me? Is there a situation where I could be the second guy instead of the third guy? So like, it has created a scenario in the SEC in which I think all of these coaches look at wide receivers and go, they're basically all on like 1 to 2 year contracts. And so that's really going to dictate probably a lot of why this seems so up in the air with how we talk about this, guys. It is more of a crapshoot than it was before. And another stat that reflects that. So last year, if you Google preseason all SEC, and you will see both of our faces. Remember when we were part of that and we were interviewing Arch Manning right there?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Still horrifies me to look back on that, whatever. But the media picks for preseason all SEC receiver, and you could say like, oh, media gets all this stuff wrong. Coaches get it wrong too. There were these 6 guys. First teamers were Ryan Williams, now Ryan Coleman Williams, and Cam Coleman. Second teamers, Aaron Anderson, my guy, and Ryan Wingo. Third teamers, Eric Singleton, Kevin Coleman Jr. None of those guys finished in the top 8 in the SEC in receiving yards. None of them. Wingo was the only guy who earned an all SEC nod at season's end. And I think Ryan Wingo was more of a bust than a breakout. If we're being 100% honest, I think Texas fans would agree with that. So that's my way of saying we're going to be wrong on this. We're going to be really, really wrong about this. We could have guys that we feel totally good about. When pen hits paper here, we're like, dang, steal here, steal there. But chances are we are not going to end up drafting the top 10 receivers in the SEC. And if we get like 3 guys that end up in the top 10 or like 2 guys that earn all SEC honors, we're probably going to feel pretty good, because as you go through this, and if you want to do this exercise at home of like, who do I think are the top 10 receivers in the SEC? Buddy, good luck. There is not much separation, and all of that is going to be totally forgotten when people get mad at us for our picks.
Yeah, I feel like this is one of the ones where it's like, yeah, so the list I have here, gosh, man. Yeah. Brazel, Thompson, Sategna. So like these are some guys that genuinely cooked kind of past expectations. And the sport obviously is a copycat thing where, okay, we got to get this type of player, we got to run this type of offense. And so it could be a thing where we end up with several guys that aren't transfers this year. And then suddenly it's like, that's the new trend. But that being said, there's not a lot of data to take from this list from last year. There are very few guys that had preseason expectations. So to your point, it does seem like a shopping spree in the transfer portal. It seems like guys finding situations that work for them, and raw talent really not mattering that much, to be honest.
Yeah, it's not one of those things that can overcome everything. You need a lot of things working in your favor if you're going to be an elite wide receiver in the SEC. Simple as that. So here's how I'd like to do this. And I want your approval on this before we sign off on this, because best is very subjective. If we're just saying, oh, this guy I think was better than this player, I think we should do 1 point for every receiving yard, 100 points for every receiving touchdown. So that way it just covers the duration of the field. And that way we actually have like a numerical system. Will's busting out laughing.
That's so much math. If you're doing the math,
no, it's not. No, it's not.
Okay.
No, it's not. All you have to do, you're just looking at receivers, like receiving yards. You're looking at receiving yards, receiving touchdowns. You're just adding it up and just treating it kind of like fantasy football. 100 yards is what you need to score a touchdown. So 100 points for every receiving touchdown. So that way, if a guy has, he's got 600 receiving yards and he's got 5 touchdowns on the year, boom, 600 plus 500, you get 1,100. So that way there's an easy way to kind of separate this. We're not just looking at, who ends up with an all SEC nod or something like that, because we could very easily tie. Maybe we'll get 0. I don't know. But that at least kind of lets us know we're looking for production here. It's not necessarily the flashiest, because I think there are probably going to be guys that maybe we overdraft because they make the big time flashy plays. Not to spoil any picks here coming up, but I know it'll happen because of the way that I did my board too. But that way we're looking at, did these guys produce? Did they show up and do kind of what you hoped that they would do this year? Because if a guy is electric, but he only has 300 receiving yards, all right, that's cool, but that doesn't necessarily move the needle. So that's a way to just define it, lock it into terms. I don't know that it changes things a whole lot, but would you be okay with a system like that?
No, I'm fired up about this. I think this is perfect. I think it's way better than because previously we've done Heisman stuff, and that makes sense because it's what we're talking about, but it's very subjective. This is hey, if you're some no name dude, it's at some rant, if Kentucky just ends up with a 2,000-yard receiver, it counts. Sure. I love that.
All yards are the same. Okay, we will not discriminate. Although, in terms of projection, obviously, if the guys who if half of their production came against East Tennessee State, probably not going to suggest that you're in for 1,000-yard season. At least, I don't know. We'll see. Okay. The question I always ask, Will, first pick or second 2, what do you want?
I'm so fired up to take the second 2 here. I can't wait to see where you go at 1.
I always feel like you take the thing that I want, but that's okay. I'm going to say this with my chest. I want Isiah Sategna. He's my 1. Yeah, he's my 1. And he's not the best player overall at the position. Okay. But I am trying to win this draft with production, because no returning receiver in the SEC produced like this guy last year. He was 3rd in the SEC in receiving, but 1st in the SEC in receiving in conference play. If you just look at, those numbers. And remember, that's with an offense that had a new quarterback, a guy that struggled down the stretch. I think we could safely say that. John Mateer himself has come out and said, yes, you saw the throwing motion. It was not particularly good. By the way, AI photos of John Mateer and his arms, and seemingly everybody's arms. What kind of loser is sitting at home just doing AI on quarterbacks' arms? Get better things to do with your time.
It's a little sus.
Yeah. The front squat, okay. The front squat, legit. Not AI, as Oklahoma said. That's impressive. If you've ever front squatted before, very, very difficult weight distribution. Respect for John Mateer. The biomechanics expert that he's seeing, George Stoyer wrote about this for On 3 to work on his throwing motion. That's interesting because it's kind of the same thing that Will Levis did before he got to Kentucky. And it was kind of the thing that really allowed him to develop into an NFL type prospect. John Mateer is a different player than Will Levis. I'm not saying that, 3 or 4 inches shorter as well. But Mateer has to get better with the lower half for us to see an even better version of Isiah Sategna. If Isiah Sategna is going to become like this 1,300-yard guy who is just a national household name, I think it's because John Mateer is in the Heisman Trophy conversation. Because last year, we said this all the time. When Oklahoma needed to get bailed out, boop, hit the Isiah Sategna button. That's what they would do. 18 catches that went for at least 20 yards, tied for the most in the SEC. He could have some of his production accounted for if they are going to have more depth at that position, with Trell Harris, all being the drum team member, coming over from Virginia, Parker Livingston crossing enemy lines from Texas to Oklahoma. Still, though, I just think Sategna is such a high floor guy. He's so good after the catch. He's not going to need the high volume of targets to be able to get there. And this is a guy who was tied with Jeremy Bernard for the most targets in the SEC, 102 targets last year, and he gets his quarterback back. And again, I think they should have a better passing offense, or at least a more consistent one. Should be a preseason first team All SEC guy. I know that's probably bold to take Isiah Sategna at 1. I'm okay with it. I think he is worthy of it.
I'm so mad right now. This is the worst I've been undercut in one of these in my life. I wanted him.
When did you think you were going to be able to get?
I thought I was going to draft him next. What I thought I was going to do was make you split the Texas guys, pick the other one against Sategna, and now I'm cooked.
No,
I love this pick. I can't even cap. I see that he's right there. I mean, if you can do what he did last year in an offense that was not just broken but inconsistent, okay, if you start off your year and you're like, we just can't throw the football, okay, you figure it out. Last year they started the year with a Heisman Trophy candidate, and they finished the year Obviously they made the playoff. You know what I'm saying? They beat Alabama. In the middle, who's to say what happened? Pretty much just Isiah Sategna on a game-by-game basis. We had really no idea what Oklahoma was, and it really just broke down to how many times could this guy get the football? Were his ridiculous plays getting called back for holding and stuff? Like, it really just he was the straw that stirred the drink in a way that I don't think anyone else was in the SEC last year. And when you think about, like, I've talked ad nauseum about Coleman and the difference he made last year, Sategna was like that, but it led to winning. It was like when he got the production, they won games. And so, yeah, I think this is actually kind of a lock to go number one.
And a guy that's got experience against SEC competition because it's not like he was coming from the group of 5 ranks, like came from Arkansas. Okay. Like he's been seeing SEC defenses and just thought he was, in my opinion, like way more than they could have expected last year. Like I was expecting Deion Burks to step up and be that go-to guy, and it ends up being Sategna, and like not even really close, in my opinion. And I just think that they have a lot of faith in him. And even if he doesn't bail them out in as many key spots, I just think that his return was one of the most significant of any of the playoff contenders. And it didn't really get talked about nationally in the way that I thought it should have, but I like Sategna to have as high of a floor. Like you can't whiff on that guy that you're taking one in this draft. And I think Sategna will be, at least as long as he stays healthy, like a 900 receiving yard type guy.
Yeah, I like him a lot, and now I'm actually fascinated because I thought I could tier split you, and now there are 3 guys I want here. So okay, well, might as well fight fire with fire and go Mario Craver.
I had him 3rd on my board, Will. 3rd on my board. I was hoping to get him when you came back. That's a good pick.
Yep. I think lots of the same reasons here. You got your quarterback returning. It's an interesting situation, I think, is true for both of these guys, that their quarterback is coming back, but they have another gear, we think. I think that they both would be happy to just have the season they had last year, but the offense is going to get better. And for Craver, there's no Concepcion. There's an added weight to the offense, like we talked about, last week about Texas A&M, where we really need to see Marcel Reed throw the football to become an NFL prospect. He has all the incentive in the world to just lock into the passing game, and Craver specifically, who already has the chemistry with. And they were able to support 2 big dog wide receivers last year. So let's just say they spread the ball around a little bit more. Let's say they get a couple more weapons. You still have that one guy who's going to be your safety blanket. And I think that matters.
Yeah, I thought last year when Casey Concepcion kind of blossoms into this guy who everybody's looking at by the time the end of the regular season rolled around and going, that's a future first-round receiver, the way that he moves. It was kind of forgotten how good Craver was. And, fun fact about him, and one of the reasons I had him so high on my board, even though we point out the deficiencies in Marcel Reed's game, like this is somebody who was too turnover prone in the intermediate, like needs to get better if Mario Craver is going to be, truly a national name in the way that he was at the start of last season. But we kept bringing up his yak yards last year. Like what he does yard after the catch was so evident. That play that he made against Notre Dame, the catch and run, one of the most ridiculous plays a receiver made all year. The only 2 power conference receivers who were ahead of him in yak yards, Zachariah Branch, because he had an average depth of target of 3.6 yards, because that's just what he was in that offense, and that was fine, and it worked for what Georgia did, and Malachi Toney, because he was Malachi Toney. People forgot that, like, Craver's production was still really good, man. Like 2 fewer catches and 2 fewer receiving yards than Concepcion, a first-round pick. And Craver coming back was really important for this offense and what they're going to have to do if this passing game is going to be more consistent. You talk about like those other weapons. You bring in Isaiah Horton coming over from Bama, which is always interesting when a guy moves like that within the conference. And I'm curious kind of what that looks like with him. But I think he should be a nice compliment for what Craver likes to do out of the slot. So yeah, I like this pick. He was going to be taken high on the board, and I don't know that he's going to be a first-team All-SEC guy because he's not as much of a household name. But I think people just in general are down on the A&M passing attack, but it's kind of similar to what we talk about with Sategna.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody has to catch passes, and Reed, I don't think is going to get worse this year. If anything, like I said, I think he's going to be leaned on more. So this next one is really where the rubber meets the road, right? So I got to pick a Texas guy. I wasn't going to get them both.
Maybe.
I think either way I go here, I'm going to get killed because I think either way the next one's like, oh, the guy you should have taken. But I think given my overall take on this player, I'm going Cam Coleman.
That's fair. Second on my board. Love
Yeah.
Cam Coleman.
I think he's a better player than Wingo. Not to dump on Wingo, but if you're going to go with the guy who has the experience, this has been some experienced picks so far, guys that are coming back and everything. I think that if you feel happy with the passing attack, you don't go and get Coleman and pursue him the way that they did. You're going to have to make promises behind closed doors to say, here's the guaranteed production. No, we know we have Ryan Wingo, but trust me, you're going to get fed, And again, I've said it enough. People can say I have a man crush on him. That's fine. He is he's the type of receiver I genuinely like. He's a bigger guy. He's a faster guy. Growing up watching the Michael Thomases and the Calvin Johnsons, having a large receiver who can make plays and also is shifty. There's just no type of player I like better. I think that he made such a difference for Auburn last year. And I think that he tried to make it work, and it just didn't. I think that just given the opportunities he had, it was amazing what he did. But I think now is his time to really just show up on that big stage. He's a guy that I picked to get a little bit of Heisman love. So I got to stay with my guy here. And he could be a first-team all SEC guy if Arch Manning stays upright.
Can I address the Cam Coleman is overrated crowd? Can I
Sure.
just let me preach to those who are in that camp, because I hear you. Guys just trying to finish as a top 15 receiver in the SEC for the first time. What are you guys saying about him? Why is he paid so much money when the production isn't there yet? Here's the obvious reason. He had a quarterback who notoriously refused to throw it downfield, and yet he led the SEC with 9 contested catches on 20-yard throws. And he finished with an SEC best 13 contested catches overall, even more than Carnell Tate, whose best skill set as the first receiver taken in the NFL draft is contested catches. So now, of course, he's got Arch and the Ryan Wingo part of this. We're going to get to you talk about why would Texas do this if they felt good about their receiver room? It's 100% spot on, because they had a huge need to get a contested catch guy. Ryan Wingo had 4 contested catches last year for a Texas offense that had just 15 contested catches with a first-year starting quarterback who struggled with accuracy. It was such an obvious need for Texas that we started talking about this in early November, this fit of Cam Coleman and Burn Orange would make a lot of sense, wouldn't it? And then sure enough, Cam Coleman and Burn Orange makes a lot of sense. And the only question I think I have about him fitting into this offense and if Cam Coleman's not going to be a first team all SEC receiver, if he's not going to live up to this sort of hype, it's about target distribution. And I'm sure this is kind of why you had that debate of which Texas guy do I go with, because Ryan Wingo last year had twice as many targets as any other Texas pass catcher, even though he had the 7 drops. It was touch and go. And at the same time, you could say all right, if Arch throws for 3,500 yards and 30 touchdown passes, which is not that crazy of a projection, given the crazy projections that have been out there for Arch, there's plenty of production to go around. And as we know, Coleman can just have those takeover games where he's it's very reminiscent of what Julio used to do. If you ever own Julio Jones on fantasy, and he would have a first quarter where he's oh my God, he's already got 100 receiving yards and he's taken over this game. Cam Coleman can do that for you. So even if he has a rough 3 or 4 game stretch, he can just pop right back to earth and make up for it. So I will not be in the Cam Coleman is overrated camp because of his surroundings, what they were. If he still struggles in surroundings this good this year, all right, then that's a conversation we're going to have with the NFL Draft Talk, which I think he's in line for that. But he's a phenomenal player who is one of these guys that needed a better situation.
Yes, I absolutely love that stat about downfield contested catches. That is exactly why I love him. I started to speak about my favorite thing that I like about him is his grittiness, but of course you could hear the chirping of, the fumble gets payable, but no, that's what it is, man. It's the fact that you throw the ball up and you can go get it. And those type of jump ball, big body wide receivers are so hard to find today because everybody wants to kind of be shifty. So it's really the combination of all that stuff. But in reality, it's his physicality that I think can make him a big weapon for Texas in a way that Ryan Wingo, like you said, couldn't last year.
So now the question becomes, do I take this guy, the most polarizing returning player in the SEC, one could argue? Yeah, let's do it. All right, give me Ryan Coleman Williams. Let's do it. And it's funny because at this time last year, we got into the discussion like Cam Coleman versus Ryan Williams, which one is better? And then there were so many, like, I remember writing that column for SDS, and there were so many people being like, how could you even say that? I'm like, the gap is not nearly what people think it is. Like, and then sure enough, this year, I think if you just poll the average person, like, who would you rather have on your team? It would have been really interesting to see what the market would have looked like for Ryan Coleman Williams in the way that we saw the market play out for Cam Coleman, where it felt like he could have gone to the highest bidder. He was easily going to be the most coveted guy in the transfer portal. And I don't mean to continue to compare them because obviously they're not playing in the same state anymore. They were always going to be compared to one another, and that's just reality for guys that came out in the same class as 5-star receivers going to rival schools. So I get all of that. And I do think, though, that if you are just anti Ryan Coleman Williams, you need to hear part of this conversation, okay? Because the talent is too loud to ignore. The flaws are also too loud to ignore. Okay, so let's start with the good here. If you look at the side by side compared to the aforementioned Julio Jones in his first 2 years, they are separated by 4 catches and 34 receiving yards. And Ryan Coleman Williams has 4 more receiving touchdowns. And you could say, hey, they played in different offenses.
Well, how many more games there? Not to be that guy.
Ryan Coleman Williams he played in 13 his first year. And then I think it was like only maybe 1 or 2 more games. I mean, Julio Jones played
I got you. Yep.
Yeah, Julio Jones played in an SEC championship. Both of those first 2 years, played in a national championship in his second season. So like he still played plenty of games. And like I get it, like different offenses. You could also say Bama has more receiver depth now than what they did back in 2008 and 2009, if you want to look at those rosters. And let's not pretend like 2024 Jalen Milroe was at some elite passing level in what they wanted in the Kalen DeBoer offense. So, all right, the other thing, the sophomore slump. It's nearly identical. People are going to hate this. It is nearly identical sophomore year production to one Amari Cooper, who was banged up that whole year. And you could say, well, his was injury related. His was just performance between the ears related. They don't want to bring up the fact that Ryan Coleman Williams was banged up in the first part of the season. They don't want to mention that because of how bad he was in the season opener. I get that, even though he was hurt on that play. They were separated by 4 catches, 47 yards. Okay. We know that Julio and Amari, those guys in their pre-draft seasons, phenomenal players, legacy cemented. So I'm not saying that what Ryan Coleman Williams does is automatically going to be in lockstep with that. I am just saying, if that is your biggest critique, there could be some pushback. And if you're saying there is a roadblock to him being an elite player, I would disagree with that. Can Ryan Coleman Williams be that dude? The guy that we saw against Georgia, we're like, this dude is an alien. He's going to take over college football. And then Jeremiah Smith ends up doing all the things we thought Ryan Coleman Williams was going to do. He's got a new name, he's got a new number, but it's kind of the same task, okay? And for all those saying I'm just glazing and we're just falling in love with the highlights. Okay,
you're not allowed to like any player ever, actually, or it's
Yeah.
glazing. That's the thing. If you think an athlete is good at being athletic, you're a homer.
Yes, of course. I mean, I get it. He's got plenty of detractors, and here is why, okay? He led power conference receivers with 10 drops, 2 more than anybody else at the power conference level. Only 5 contested catches when we watched 20 SEC wide receivers have at least 6 last season, and he wasn't one of them. And for a guy that's so lethal after the catch, and you're like, look, man, just get the ball in his hands. Let's see what he can do. He's only 15th in the SEC in yak yards. So that's got to get better. It's possible that Russell's classmate, Lottie Brooks, guy that's going to be mentioned later on in this, he could emerge as the wide receiver 1 in this offense, and Coleman Williams is more of like the highlight reel complimentary type guy. But I still think that there is just so much talent and so much potential. And I'm willing to take a chance on a guy that is 19 years old. Yes, he's 19 now, not 17, and already has 1,600 scrimmage yards and 14 touchdowns at this level, as polarizing as he is. I get the entire Ryan Coleman Williams spectrum, I promise.
Yeah, there's a lot to this. And this is the type of guy that I feel like, we're not really equipped to talk about just yet as a society, because you can talk about.
Yeah, we are. We had Dennis Rodman. We could talk about this stuff. Who cares?
No, but it's the fact that he's so young. You know what I'm saying? It's the fact that like we want to hold him to these like adult, levels of like competence. And he's a kid. He's going to make mistakes. To your point, he was 17 for a lot of this. And I think that the 2 Alabama offenses he's played in have kind of uniquely failed him in different ways. Like Jalen Milroe's limitations created like a symbiote. Like they were just joined at the hip with Ryan Williams, which magnified both of their weaknesses, right? Like Jalen Milroe would get locked into one player. It was Ryan Williams. Ryan Williams did not have the adult body to take 18 targets in an SEC game. So he started dropping the football, started running away from contact. Didn't obviously, I would say it's fair to say at this point, didn't handle fame super well his first year. I think that the spotlight was immediately put on him after the Georgia game. I think the defense is keyed on him, and Alabama didn't do enough to really diversify their game plan. Now, their game plan might have been diversified, but when the ball was snapped, I knew what Milroe was doing every play. He was looking at Ryan Williams, and he was looking down at his feet, and that was kind of what it was going to do. And so his efficiency went way down. It was this weird situation. Then last year, Ty Simpson is like kind of the opposite, where he wants to do things within scheme. He wants guys that are in time. He wants guys that are not going to take risks and maybe drop the football. And Jeremy Bernard was like a perfect player for him. Yes, so it was like, it's like, it doesn't make Jeremy Bernard necessarily better than Ryan Williams. It makes him like we were talking about, a much better fit for the system. So in year one, you have too high of expectations. In year two, it's like you can't live up to those expectations because the offense is a little bit better, but it's not running through one 17-year-old kid who's not really built like a Calvin Johnson, like we talked about. So I think there's a lot of words to be said on him, but I think that at this point we're in, kind of year three here. We're in year two of the Ryan Grubb experience, if you believe in that a little bit. And so I think it's kind of now or never. And this could be shaping up to be one of the only players that I'd say Alabama has kind of let down. Because if they can't figure him out in year three, it's clear that he has talent and it really hasn't been optimized in that way. So I think he's a super talented player. Can they figure him out this year?
Some of it's on him.
Oh, I said that from the jump. He didn't handle it well. He made it about, I'm the next TO. It's like, brother, you're 17 and like 5'10". What are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, you got it. Hey, he's bigger than 5'10". Catch football. Above all else, catch football. Worry about all that other stuff later, man. And I would have been fascinated what the market would have told us about him and about his impact. And I think he still would have had a very wide and vast market. But you're in a situation now where you've got what I think is going to be an uberly talented quarterback in Keelan Russell. And if you are truly that guy, you have to look the part. It's no longer an excuse that you're too young. You got more reps than any of these cats. And you can't be dropping footballs in key spots. You can't be having guys that come in and do things better than you, like one Lottie Brooks, a guy that we'll get to in a second here. And I do think that there are so many people that want to see Ryan Coleman Williams fail. Okay? That's just the cold hard truth. And you can embrace that, or you can let it overcome you. And I think to this point in his career, I think he's done the latter a little bit more so than ever. He's still been a productive player. He has just been a guy that too often in his career has been like the third option in a passing game. And for a guy that's as talented as he is, that should not happen. And so being able to get rid of that and be a true go-to guy for an entire season, that's his task this year. So I know I'm going to get pushed back on here for that. The ceiling is still immensely high. I knew I was going to go high floor with my first guy, and I was going to try and go high ceiling with my round two guy, knowing that this was going to be, a little bit all over the place. So I guess it's a dart throw to take Ryan Coleman Williams with the 4th overall pick in this.
Yeah, and I'd say that's a good take on it, which is it's been very feast or famine. Either he's been your number one option or he's kind of disappeared and maybe pouted a little bit, right? And I think it's the same. It's basketball advice I'd give a football player. Be good without the ball, right? Be good at blocking. Be good at setting your guys up. Be effective in your second and third role. And then when you get the chance to shine, that's how you earn it, right? You don't just get to walk onto campus and be that guy. So, yeah, I think that
would you have taken him? Would you have taken him with your next pick?
Honestly, I was thinking about it. Yeah.
Okay. That's what pushed me to take him, even though I think I'll probably get crushed in the comments for that. Whatever. We're after production here. All right. Your pick, your third pick. This is 5th overall.
Okay. Third pick, fifth overall. We're already going with a little bit of upside here. I'm going to go Mike Matthews from Tennessee.
Like that pick. Really like that pick.
Yeah. So low key, Tennessee's been stacking some guys in recruiting. This is a former 5-star guy who already, has produced in the SEC. Like we talked about, Tennessee is just reloading at the wide receiver position quietly under Josh Heupel for the last 4 or 5 years. And this is a little bit of a pick of the offense plus the talent. I don't exactly say that I've seen enough with Brazel eating all the targets and the attention that he had last year. But I think that Tennessee is going to have a guy who pops. I think it's going to be this guy, and how awesome he looks doing it. We'll see. We'll see if he develops into an NFL receiver. Some of the Tennessee guys have struggled to do that, but I think the stats are going to be there, and that's fundamentally why I'm making this pick. So I'm not going to say, hey, I'm this guy's biggest stan. I'm going to say when the chips fall and we look at the end of the year, he's probably going to be top 10 in the SEC in receiving.
I had him 8th on my board. He was probably going to get taken. I mentioned how rare it is for receivers to stay in the same place for 3 years. And I think that goes double for a former 5-star guy like Matthews. And, he is entering year 3, what could be his pre-draft season. And it was a solid year 2, albeit as kind of like the third option in that passing game, which is pretty crazy. I mean, the third leading receiver in the Tennessee offense last year had 813 receiving yards, which is significant when you remember that last year, the discussion about the Tennessee passing game was they've developed their route tree. It's not the same as it once was with these wide splits that NFL people look at and they laugh at. And it's a lot more diverse. And time will tell, like kind of how that translates to the next level as it relates to the college level. It's maybe not quite as important, but it is significant in that they showed at least more versatility in those ways. And this is a guy who in year 2 had more receiving yards than fellow year 2 guys, Cam Coleman, Ryan Coleman-Williams, guys who have already been drafted. And speaking of Ryan Coleman-Williams, if there is a knock on Matthews, it's not even that he was like the third option in the passing game last year, and maybe he'll end up being the second this year with the guy that I'm about to draft. He also had twice as many drops as contested catches. If we're being honest, I do think that Tennessee's passing offense is very likely to regress. It might be, if you're picking one thing in the SEC where you're like, that's going to get worse this year, it's the Tennessee passing offense.
And that speaks on honestly how good it was last year. And I feel like that was one thing that we were kind of both on, which is like, hey, we could say some negative stuff about Tennessee for sure, but this passing game is much better than we expected.
Yeah, I mean, Joey Aguilar was an adult in the room. He definitely was. Still, though, like, you talk about Heupel cranking out some of these guys. He's had 7 guys that have hit 800 receiving yards, including Matthews last year. He and Braylon Staley are an exceptional 1-2 punch, and it's the strength of this team coming back. And if you're kind of wondering, like, yeah, I don't really know what this quarterback situation is going to look like, you do feel better at least knowing that the receiver position is not going to be an issue. You don't think it's going to be an issue. So I'll just go ahead and take my guy then here. I'm going to take Braylon Staley, the guy who last year, SEC Freshman of the Year, did not get talked about a lot. And remember how I said that the top 7 in the SEC in receiving were former transfers? I didn't say top 8 because Braylon Staley was 8th on that list. And he's coming off a redshirt freshman season in which he outproduced those guys. He outproduced the Cam Coleman, Ryan Coleman-Williams, and Ryan Wingo, by the way. Yet we didn't talk a lot about him being the SEC Freshman of the Year because when you have a hollow 8-win season, that's part of it. He was the second option on that team behind Chris Brazzell, who's obviously now off to the NFL. And yet you look up at the numbers and they were really, really good. I mean, second behind only Zachariah Branch in terms of receptions per SEC game. He did have 6 drops and only 4 contested catches. That's not great, but a slot receiver in the Josh Heupel offense can feast. I mean, we've seen this time and time again before they did the changing of the route tree and all that stuff. The only reason that he's not higher is the quarterback situation. Like, I think he'd be maybe a top 3 pick if they had a returning starting quarterback, or if Joey Aguilar had just been able to beat the system and get another year of eligibility. I had Tennessee fans kind of in my mentions with my quarterback rankings because I had George McIntyre and they all were like, hey, Faison Brandon, he's going to be the guy. Again, like TBD, if I'm wrong on that, that's totally fine. I probably wouldn't have had a very different ranking anyway, so that's okay. But either way, it's an inexperienced quarterback with a very experienced group of receivers. So how that plays out, we'll see. Are we going to be blaming the quarterbacks? Are the receivers going to be bailing out the quarterbacks? I don't know. There's still going to be more run heavy, probably, but this is a really good group of wideouts with Staley and Matthews. And I think it's pretty telling that we took those 2 before we took the Texas 2. So something to keep in mind when we have these preseason discussions with Tennessee.
This is such a funny draft by you. I feel like you're trolling me here. It's like, oh yeah, you want this guy? Let me tell you, I have better guys on his team. You're cooking. No, I mean, but I think that's honestly the best respect we could give Tennessee is saying, Can't really tell which one of these guys is going to pop, but it's certainly going to be one of them. We don't really know what the quarterback situation is going to be. Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that's the thing too. And that's why I make the point about last year's quarterback situation coming off of Nico, where it's just like, we could just skip parts of this offense. This is just brutal to watch, even though you had the big wins. Tennessee was such an underratedly weird team last year because, again, like we really trusted their defense, and that fell apart. Their offense was a little bit of a question mark, and you can kind of draw a through line and say, oh, was Heupel kind of a quarterback merchant with Hendon Hooker? And then you look back now, and it's like, no, it just feels like Nico was the problem, right? Because they still had some great receivers. They still had a good run game. And so now looking back, I think that's, if you were, this is kind of my whole point about Tennessee. If you look back to before the Heupel era and you're just like, this feels like about the third time in a row where we're just like, yeah, they'll probably figure it out. We're not really sure how. It feels like that's not even true. It's back to being true at Georgia, but I don't know another SEC situation where we're just going, I don't even really care who they line up. It's going to work.
I guarantee you a big part of the pitch for those quarterbacks that they pursued in the transfer portal, or Ty Simpson, the guy who wasn't in the transfer portal technically, but like Sam Levitt and Ty Simpson, I guarantee you at some point they sat down and just said, hey, watch highlights of Mike Matthews, watch highlights of Braylon Staley. You'll get to throw to them. You'll look really, really good. This offense had the number 6 passing attack in college football last year, even though it was kind of a massive question mark coming into the year. And there is something to be said for that. We will see how it plays out. This is the part of the draft where it's really, I think we're going to be all over the place. Like I have my top 5 are off the board here. It's already based on like after pretty much the first 3 picks of this draft. But who do you have with your 4th pick? And this is 7th overall.
I could not have anticipated that you just didn't like Wingo this much. I feel like at this point I have to take Wingo. It's funny because I thought, like I said, he was going to go at least to the top 4. We were going to split them, and then you didn't take him. You kind of did. I was like, okay, if this dude gets Wingo, like at the end of this draft, he's going to cook me. I have to go back and take him. And I like Wingo. Like it sounds like we're both anti. We're really not. He was one of the most dynamic. I don't know. I'd say with the ball, probably top 3 most dynamic receivers in the SEC.
Up there. And
you hate this guy.
I don't know. I had him 10th on my board. I had him 10th. And I'll be lower than consensus on Ryan Wingo, even though I think I saw maybe his best. I think I saw his best overall play in person. The catch that he made against Florida, with the route running and the tracking and the throw that Arch made to him was like anything that you said positively about Arch in this new look offense. It was confirmed on that one play. But I have my reservations. But I don't want to dunk on this because I do like the player. But go ahead with your case for him.
I would say he was one of the most electric players in the SEC with the ball. I think he was a guy who got the Texas offense going when it got stuck in the mud. I think there's a safety blanket element here. And ultimately what it is, it's funny that I'm getting cast as this guy because I'm generally such a hater, but I think Arch Manning is really ready this year. And I think that he could support, look, again, if the Tennessee offense can support 3 top 11 guys, I certainly think the Texas passing game can get 2 about top 10 guys. I think that's what we're looking at here. I think those are 2 receivers that complement each other tremendously well. I think that it truly could be a 1-1A situation where Wingo is the type of guy that kind of sucks the defenders in to go, hey, he's going to do some fun stuff in the backfield. You got to always watch for the screen. You always got to watch that he can take a slant and go with it. And then actually taking the top off of the defense might be a little bit more of Coleman, where it goes, hey, we got to man him up downfield for those contested catches. And so I think these guys, assuming Arch, stays upright and progresses, because even by the end of the year, I feel like the offense was starting to click a little bit more. And if they can just kind of copy paste that and say, hey, we're still with Sark, we get this extra offseason, we're adding a plug and play receiver. Like I said, I just think that the versatility here, maybe he's not great at anything outside of his speed, but he was been so trusted last year, to your point about the target share, that he's going to get his spots here. And I think he's going to cook with them.
A lot was put on him last year, and I just don't think he was quite ready. I think it played out. And this was a guy who was asked to be wide receiver 1 for the preseason number 1 team in college football. It's a lot as a second-year guy. And yeah, you could say, well, if you watch camp, like this guy was always going to be. No. Ryan Wingo was that dude. Preseason All-SEC, okay? And that wasn't just some media narrative. And you wonder how it's going to look now with he and Cam Coleman, and you could definitely make the case Cam Coleman's going to suck up so much of that attention. Ryan Wingo should benefit from that. Maybe this is the 1A role that he's meant to be in. Like this he's more of like a complement as opposed to like a true alpha number one wide receiver, and that could be to Texas's benefit. The reason that I struggle with him a little bit, the drops were alarming. He had the 94 targets, which was great. Obviously, Arch did not lose faith in him. Didn't just be like, "Yeah, I'm ghosting you. I'm just gonna feed other dudes in this offense." 7 drops on 94 targets. Only had the one game of 100 yards, albeit in the furious comeback that they had against Mississippi State, which kept Texas's playoff hopes alive. So that was good. But for a guy that was deemed kind of disappointing last year, the numbers were still pretty good. I mean, 68 catches for 834 yards. And maybe I haven't given that enough credit to do that as like a second-year guy who plays primarily on the outside in the SEC. So you're right. Like maybe I'm too low on Ryan Wingo and I'm perhaps too high on Cam Coleman, and they could be a lot closer. Maybe I shouldn't have had that much separation to have Cam Coleman at 2 and Ryan Wingo at 10 on my board. I would like to see the drops go away, and I would like to see them have a true like, hey, it's 3rd and 6. Ryan Wingo can go do this for you, and you could just trust him to do that. That's what we need to see from him this year, and we did not see that enough last year. And it's not entirely to blame for why Texas was just kind of a tough watch offensively at points, but I think it was definitely part of it.
The swing pass against Vandy, I think was special. And he ended up getting injured a little bit on that play too. That's why I had to go look up and make sure. I was like, that 2 guys. No, like I think that when you talk about this 3rd and 6, I think we just detailed it, right? It's like, okay, Cam Coleman can either hit you with like a slant or a post to spread out the defense. And then you got to go stop this guy one-on-one in space on like a screen, swing pass, something like that. And I think, like I said, get the ball in his hands and see what happens. And without the entire defense focused on a player like that, I think it changes. So I'm excited about him this year.
And you're right. If they improve the ground game and if Arch improves his accuracy on those 0 to 9 yard throws, which are a staple of the Sark offense, Ryan Wingo stands to benefit from that. Probably stands to benefit from that even more than Cam Coleman. So, look, he was probably going to come off the board. I figured I wasn't going to get him. I did not expect that you would end up with both Texas guys. You're right. I thought we
just kept sticking me with him and daring me to draft him. I love that strat.
Yeah, look, it worked. Maybe it didn't work. Okay, I can go in a lot of different ways. You know what? I got to go with my Alabama drum guy. Give me Isiah Canion. And this is so stupid, but this is the way that our brains work sometimes as college football fans. The only reason I didn't have him as like top 5 on my board or top 4, because I think the talent is really good. Georgia's lone 1,000-yard receiver is still just Terrence Edwards, and they haven't had a first-team All-SEC receiver since AJ Green 2009. And that history is just always in the back of my mind of like, don't hype it up just because it's Georgia. Like the way that this offense has typically worked, there's probably a lower ceiling than what we're usually talking about here for these Georgia receivers. Okay.
College football is such a hilarious sport because you look at Tennessee, like I said, they got 3 top 11 guys. And it's like, yeah, their 3rd receiver could almost get 1,000 yards, but they're Tennessee and they win 8 games. You look over at Georgia, it's like, yeah, you got you're kind of inventing positions. You got like dudes Branch playing like an H-back, and you got dudes doing stuff, but they're kind of smoking everybody. It's what a funny sport, man.
Yeah, like your best receiver catches like all of his passes at the line of scrimmage.
Sure. Yeah.
Just all these screens and stuff like that. That's kind of your go-to in the passing game. And it advanced a little bit, but there's going to be opportunity there. And that's a big part of why I'm high on Canion. And I truly think they pursued him and said, you're going to be our go-to guy. And I think he and Gunnar Stockton can develop a really nice rapport. I think they complement each other well, especially, and this is the huge if Gunnar Stockton is willing to attack downfield more. Huge if of the Georgia offense this year. Mike Bobo's play calling, all those different things. It's very well documented. But this is a very
potato last year. I think we're going to see, especially to start the year, him ripping it.
I think so too. I think we were starting to see signs of that in November, and then you're right. I think some of the injury stuff maybe played a part in that. But this is someone who can catch passes all over the place. Only had 2 drops on 56 career targets at Georgia Tech, which we know the Haynes King version of that offense was probably not going to necessarily yield like a 1,300-yard receiver or something like that or anything crazy. But I think Canion shows up with just the right mindset. And he's going to be exactly what they need at that position with what is very much a transition year at wide receiver. They're really relying on a lot of those young guys, CJ Wiley, Taylor, who, by the way, went to Geneva High School. My cousin, fellow Geneva High School receiver, former Geneva High School receiver, albeit a couple decades ago. But I love me some Isiah Canion. I really, really do. Love the ball tracking skills, the spatial awareness that he has, I think is like really NFL level. And even if he's not a 1,000-yard guy, I think he could play in 14 games, double-digit touchdowns, and is one of the 5 best returning quarterbacks in college football, like his favorite target. So I like the value there. I like getting Canion this late in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, this is really putting your money where your mouth is as an analyst, because there's kind of like the cute stories that's like, oh, I like this guy, but to really say like, no, this guy is going to do something at Georgia, I think is a big deal. And I mean, I'm there with you. My interest is peaked. I think that ultimately, you know, it's hard because we can kind of go back and forth on Bobo, but I feel like last year was actually a very good year for him as a play caller, and I think that they were kind of missing that guy. And Georgia historically kind of has been, even under Curry, even during this run. It's like they've been able to develop great wide receivers. Like you had some of the guys kind of in the slot here and there, but it was more about the tight ends. It was more about kind of the trickeration. I think this is a chance to develop something they haven't had and to really change fundamentally how the Georgia offense looks. And it's coming right at the perfect time, with the passing game progressing, with the O-line kind of getting set. I could see this one, man. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Ladd McConkey, Brock Bowers, George Pickens, not 1,000-yard receivers.
That's the thing.
Like,
people are going to push back on like, oh, they had Ladd McConkey. Oh, they had George Pickens. Yeah. Again, they're kind of like LSU in the 2010s. Those guys get to the NFL. It's like, oh my God, where were these guys? Ladd was the kind of that inside out player. Pickens kind of couldn't keep it all on the field, right?
I heard his pre-draft season too, and that definitely derailed some of it. But yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's like you just, for whatever reason, that's just always going to loom until it doesn't, and until all of a sudden that just starts to change. But I think that probably will limit his ceiling overall. But that's okay. So, all right, this is your final pick of this draft. I'm amazed that you haven't taken an LSU guy yet. I thought there was going to be at least one that you were going to take. Are you going in that direction, or are you going elsewhere and you're not going to end up with a single LSU guy?
Not going to end up with an LSU guy.
Wow.
Don't know who's going to get hot. I mean, we're talking about Lane Kiffin with like $1 billion transfer. We could get a guy, this random dude from Syracuse who got kicked off the team, be a number one receiver. I don't know. What I think I know, or what I think, I'm going to trust our friend the Big Chungus over at Mississippi State. I'm going to take Anthony Evans III. This is another guy who, again, quietly. That's why I love that we're doing this statistically and not based on hype. And again, back to the Canion thing, same deal. It's like, no, we're putting our money where our mouth is with stats. This is a guy who was, part of a pair of very, very good receivers last year. We could say a lot of negative things about Mississippi State, and we did. But their passing game, statistically, we can talk about the big moments. We can talk about the end of games, all that different stuff. Stats don't care about your feelings. And when you get to the end of the year, this is a Mississippi State passing game that I think developed. I think they do have their quarterback of the future. I think that you can say, oh, they're going to be a little bit more dual threat now. They're not going to be as true air focused. But I think that, losing the big wide receiver from last year, Brendan Thompson, and saying, hey, this could be kind of the Milrose situation where it's a one read and go in an offense that's proven that they can develop passers and move the football. I think that this is a safety pick, but I think it's one that I'm going to feel great about at the end of the year.
Had 300-yard game. This is what I wanted to look up. He had 300-yard games against power conference competition. Like, I just talked about how Ryan Wingo had the lone 100-yard game, ironically enough, against Mississippi State. But it's going to probably be overlooked, the loss of Brennan Thompson. But if you have that dude in Kamario Taylor, a guy that I've been trying to say this throughout the offseason, and if I had been allowed to take quarterbacks on my own self-enforced, I'll be in the drum team, I would have taken Kamario Taylor. If Kamario Taylor,
I actually ripped him off of my board for that reason. Guys started to be like, I'm going to take him anyway. I was like, I don't want to do that to you if you liked him too, because I'm right there with you. I think he's going to be really good this year.
Yeah, like former Georgia transfer who I think if we see the best version of Kamario Taylor, Anthony Evans is going to be a great player. Like I really think that's going to be the case. And in this offense should be clicking now. Like this should not have late game miscues. in the way that they did last year. And I realize we're just talking about production, so it's not as much like, oh, when are you making these plays? But they needed Evans to be as good as he was against Arizona State for Brendan Thompson's heroics to matter. Like that was really important. And for Jeff Lebby to get this rebuild right, you were going to have to hit it with those skill players in the portal. And so far, that looks like a hit. And that's a really good thing that's working in your favor. This is a good way to finish out your draft. And I'm actually kind of jealous that you went in this direction because I was not going to take him. And I'm debating like a lot of different things right now as I'm talking this out and just stalling for time. This is really all I'm doing. Gosh, that's a good pick. Dang. I could. You know what? I'm doing it. I'm going to feel dumb if I don't take this guy. And he wasn't as high on my board. I'm taking Lottie Brooks. I don't care if that makes me look like a Bama homer. I realize that's not really a thing I've been accused of in the past, except when I call out Auburn as the dud of the decade. But Lottie Brooks is so freaking good, man. And I think last year, this Bama team had so many questions at different points of the season. Most notably, when they dig themselves that hole in Norman. And you're going, how in the world is Bama going to dig itself out of this hole? And look no further than one Lottie Brooks. Without him, they don't win that game. I mean, period. They do not win that game. He was masterful as a 5'9" true freshman to do the things that he did on that stage in a visiting stadium in that weather. Like, I feel like I might even be too low on him to get him with the last pick of this draft. Like he could be the wide receiver 1 for the breakout star of college football in Keelan Russell. I love the ball tracking skills are already there. Like in the production last like kind of month of the regular season tailed off a bit. And so if you just look at, the overall numbers here, you're not going to necessarily be like, oh yeah, that's really a guy that feels like he needs to be taken. But you just watch the way that he plays the game and you understand that the dynamics there and you go, that's impressive. Because last year, Bama's plan was Ryan Coleman Williams, then Ryan Williams. He's going to be our slot guy. We're going to get him these favorable matchups. We're going to make things easier on him. We made things a little bit too tough on him. We put too much on his plate as a 17-year-old freshman, and we thought he could handle it. Turns out he couldn't. We're going to put him in the slot. We're going to let his new quarterback know kind of at the line of scrimmage when he's got a mismatch, and we're going to hope that we can be able to capitalize in this sort of way. And then Ryan Coleman Williams gets hurt, and then Lottie Brooks steps in and plays the slot better than he did. And so they're like, well, we can't take that guy off the field. We got to find a way to make this work. They try and use Ryan Coleman Williams a little bit more interchangeably and move him all over the formation, but they're like, Lottie Brooks needs to be on that football field. He just does. And look, maybe some of this is too heavily weighted on that Oklahoma game, and maybe I'm looking too far into it, the heroics that he showed. But I'm all in on him this year. And I guess I'm all in on the Bama passing attack by taking 2 Bama guys with my 5 picks here with 40% of my draft going to Bama guys. Didn't think I'd go in that direction. But, man, if Lottie Brooks leads the SEC in receiving, I'm not going to be surprised. I think he's got that type of potential.
I'm going to go in right. I'm going to be surprised by that.
Okay, that's fine.
I think he's a good player. Are you sure that he is the guy if Ryan Coleman Williams struggles?
Yeah, because I think if you're just trying to line him up and find out where is this guy going to play, let's remember that they asked Jeremy Bernard to do a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those things was play in the slot and do different things. So there's a lot more opportunity available in that way. And I think that they could figure out a role for Ryan Coleman Williams if he's struggling with what he's doing. I think they want to have Lottie Brooks as the slot guy. Whether they come out and say, hey, he's going to play every single snap in the slot or not, I think that's what they want to do. Like, I think they know it. Did you see last year, too, the story like that Ryan Grubb shared after the Oklahoma game of like Herbstreit came up to him in the bathroom and was like, that's the dude. Like, that's your guy. And
that's the most believable Herbie story ever. That's how he's been tweeting about the World Cup, too. Just walk up to you, right. Hey, play that guy more.
Yeah. Herbie will fire off a take like that, even taps you on the shoulder as you're at the urinal, like, hey, your cat out there, he's pretty darn good, man. You should give him the rock a little bit more. I think with more opportunity and with him more established going into this year, let's remember, like, probably spent all of last season with the twos and then seized his opportunity. Always beware of those guys that climb up the depth chart so soon. And then they get out that opportunity and they're like, I'm not giving this up again. Like, I need to be out there. I need to be out there on that field. So love me some Lottie Brooks.
There's a couple of guys who transfer from NC State, Noah Rodgers. I think that like ultimately, okay, I think where that Oklahoma game happened matters, because
Yes.
I will say that statistically it is kind of that game and every other game, in two different categories.
Against a really good defense and a really
Right.
good Brent Venables attack that is totally befuddled Bama to that point. And that secondary is loaded. Like, he was not doing that against scrubs by any stretch of the imagination.
100%. So like I would say that like it does have more weight going into camp, going into the next season, talking about, okay, how are we going to retool, rebuild this passing game? We again didn't do awesome last year. Like, it was solid, it was better. But yeah, I think having that type of momentum going into the camp definitely matters. I'm just, like I said, I'm with you. I'm interested. I was like tried all day to not take two Texas guys, end up with two Bama guys. Of course, Bama is going to become the Death Star and win 15 games this year, and then you're going to have two like all SEC guys. You're like, great, this always happens to me. So I think that at this point, I was a little bit too high on them last year, maybe. But we just got to know with this Alabama offense, they still have not put together what they were hired to be, ultimately. And it could be the run game, it could be the pass game. Run game wasn't exactly this big staple at Washington, right? But so ultimately, it's like, this is your prove it year if you're Alabama and you want us to really like take you seriously. And they've come through every time before. I know a lot of that was under Nick Saban, but they don't make a lot of mistakes out there in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah. And let's remember, too, it's his classmate. This guys come up together. Sometimes that magic is just there. And I'm very and again, I've talked about Keelan Russell like he already has the starting job. He has not officially been named the starter at Alabama. Even if it's Austin Mack, I'm kind of looking at this going like, I think he's really trustworthy and he's capable of looking like that wide receiver one in a given week. Okay.
So you got to pray on Ryan Coleman Williams' downfall just a little bit. Like,
No,
you got to
no,
hope
no.
that he has a drop or two in the first
No,
couple of games.
Mm-mm. Here's why. 2023 Washington will. Come on.
Of course.
Look at that passing attack. Look at that passing attack. McMillan, Dunze,
Bears legend,
Jeremy
of
Bernard,
course.
Polk. You had 4 dudes in that offense.
No, you're right. Like, you're right.
Feasting. Just saying. Love Rome still. Love Rome. Friend of the show. All right. We left out a lot of guys that people will probably say, this guy's going to be the best. And how did you forget? He's going to lead the SEC in receiving. Maybe. Very well could. Okay. We didn't take an LSU guy. If I did not take Lottie Brooks there, I was going to take Jace Brown, the Kansas State transfer, who I think is set up really, really well to be the leading receiver in this offense, but that's a dart throw. That you avoided Lane Kiffin receivers because of how much of a dart throw it feels like, right?
Yeah, it's like the Caden Lee thing last year. It's like he's going to get the guy open. It's never the guy we think it's going to be ever in any situation with Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, like I went back and looked at this because I was trying to figure out is that just in my head or is it no? It's real. Trey Harris in 2024 was a safe bet to be the leading receiver. Elijah Moore, you can make that case going into 2020, but it was still the first year with Lane Kiffin. You didn't know how he was going to fit into the offense. But he's had a new leading receiver in the SEC, like every year. Here's something of note that kind of reflects that. If we include 6 years at Ole Miss and the 3 years as an offense coordinator at Bama, so I guess we're leaving out Tennessee, whatever. Lane having a top 5 receiver in the SEC in terms of receiving yards has happened 7 times in 9 seasons. All different guys with the exception of Trey Harris repeating. So Jace Brown, like stepping up and being that guy, that would make a lot of sense. Touchdown volume is going to be a little bit tough to predict outside of like Trey Green being the ultimate cheat code for that LSU offense. But I also think they're going to be able to run the football better in the red zone too. Will said something on mute about Trey Green that made me think he didn't want anybody to hear it.
Sorry, no, my mic died a little bit. Yeah, so if I could have drafted Trey Green, I would have taken that bet.
And I would have vetoed that in a heartbeat because if we're doing a tight end draft, he's one.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, no, we can't do that. And maybe that's part of it. Maybe that's part of why we didn't draft, an LSU wide receiver. But like, what do they have? They had 5 guys on the Ole Miss passing attack last year that had at least 600 receiving yards, one of them being Caden Lee. So how do you you can't figure out who wide receiver 1 is in a given week, and that's kind of the way that they designed it. So, yeah, that's why I didn't ultimately go with him and why I didn't pull the trigger on him. But
And
who
I'll
are
say
some of the
really
other
quick,
guys?
conversely, I did take Harlan Berry in like the Heisman Flyer draft because
Yeah.
ultimately, like that's kind of the inherent thing is he picks one running back. It's a lot easier for me to choose between one of 2 running backs than it is one of five receivers.
Yeah. Eric Singleton is a guy that Roddy Jones is going to talk about in a minute here. And I'll ask this. If we're giving Cam Coleman a pass for playing in the Auburn offense, shouldn't we kind of do the same with Singleton? Maybe.
A little bit.
Yeah. Preseason All-SEC guy last year as well. Remember how we made note of that? Auburn's got 2 preseason All-SEC wide receivers. Think it'll turn out that way? Maybe not. But he gets the do-over with Buster Faulkner. Maybe it's kind of an Aaron Philo reunion, kind of not. Probably limited reps together. They did have the NC State moments together. But here's a stat for you about Eric Singleton that gave me some pause. Among the top 50 in receiving yards in the SEC last year, there was one guy who did not average 10 yards per catch. Can you guess who it was?
Oh gosh, was it Branch?
No. 10.01 for Zechariah Branch.
No, who was it?
Can't make that. It was Eric Singleton. Yeah. His average depth of target in 2 years at Georgia Tech was 13 yards in the Buster Faulkner offense. And then at Auburn with Hugh Freeze, it gets cut in half because you have bad scheme and bad quarterback play. And Zechariah Branch and Malachi Toney can have very shallow average depth of target because that's kind of when they're at their best. And Singleton's just not that type of player. He's not supposed to be used like that. But maybe with Buster Faulkner, this is going to be a great reunion. And with an inexperienced quarterback, they're like, Eric Singleton's awesome to throw the football to, and he could be a 1,000-yard guy, and I don't think anybody would be stunned. There is some depth in that receiver room with what they were able to retain at Florida, of course, so probably should be part of that. So wanted to include him. Donovan Olugbade, the guy that we brought up for the Alabama drum team from Zoo. I know we talked about the Caden Lee, Austin Simmons reunion connection, whatever that happening still at Mizzou, but Olugbade has the higher ceiling, and not just because his unofficial name is now, oh, look, a free play. More contested catches than freshman George Pickens or sane George Pickens as a true freshman.
Well,
Cam Coleman is sane George Pickens.
I see. Okay. I was about to say, I don't know if that exists. That's like dry water.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, I love Olugbade and think that he is a really good contested catch guy for a guy that I think is going to be attempting a lot of contested catch throws in Austin Simmons based on his turnover prone ways. So I think he complements Caden Lee really well. And then other guys we can just kind of rip through here. Jackson Harris, if we want to talk another LSU guy, comes from the run and shoot at Hawaii, which is electric. He could be really fun. Deuce Alexander at Ole Miss, my QB1 in all of college football, Trinidad Chambliss. Who's going to be his leading receiver? I don't know. Maybe Deuce Alexander. Maybe that would make sense. But the way that he distributes, I don't think I would put a whole lot of faith in that. That could be game to game. And then Terrell Harris, Alabama drum team member at Oklahoma. Junior Sherrill is going to be talked about very little in this offseason because it's a post Diego Pavia world, but like had a lot more production than people realized last year. Parker Livingston in Oklahoma, and then Caden Lee. So I have 19 guys. I think I had 19 guys here that I went through, and you could make a case for all of them, I think, to be taken in this draft. I don't think there is that much separation. So I know that there are teams that like we forgot some of their guys, or we didn't include some of their guys. Like we didn't have an Arkansas guy here. We didn't have a Kentucky guy. Like there's no like Will Stein offense guy. And we could be having that conversation by season's end. But that's the way that I looked at this. Any thoughts on those guys or anybody else that I feel to bring up here?
We're going to end up with like the Joe Sloan revenge year. We're going to have like the number 1 receiver in the SEC. Like,
That'd be funny.
Heck yeah. I can see it with Will Stein. No, dude, I'm right there. I think we hit the talent X scheme guys. You know, they're going to be guys we don't expect. They're going to be guys that we haven't even heard their names. It could be freshmen or transfers that we don't know about, but I think the safe bets are mostly off the board.
So let's recap this. And again, this is based on production. We will do, it's 100 yards per receiving touchdown, and then just a point for receiving yards. So that should be very easy to figure out at season's end. Will, you ended up with Mario Craver, Cam Coleman, Mike Matthews, Ryan Wingo, Anthony Evans the third, and then Anthony Evans the second, right? Yeah,
There's
the
three.
second. There's three? Oh, yeah, there's three of them. My bad. I forgot about the second. That's my fault.
If you're like invalid draft pick, bro, you drafted the wrong guy.
My bad. And then I went with Isiah Sategna, Ryan Coleman Williams, Braylon Staley, Isaiah Canion, Lottie Brooks. I think you would win the popular vote in a landslide. I really do. We'll see. I knew I was going to feel strongly like, oh my God, I just cooked on this, because if you feel like you cook in this draft, you're probably set up for failure. So who knows?
Literally, I have been once again probably cast as a Texas homer. He's choosing Texas once again, but I mean, hey, that when the value is there, you take it. I think that football in the state of Texas with A&M, UT, I think Oklahoma coming over too, like kind of in that region, they're all poised for like some really, really fun offenses, man. I mean, that was kind of the first part of our draft, was those teams.
I don't mean to speak in absolutes too much here. Choosing Texas has been stuck in my head more when head hits pillow than I think any country song in recent memory.
It's a banger.
I really like it. It's a banger. Like, it's a banger. All right, confession. I have a Return of the Mac station on Pandora. Yeah, Spotify, Pandora, whatever. We mix it up. And I'll turn it on when I'm trying to do a mile. And I just want I need two bangers. I need two bangers to get me through this, and I'll be fine. Sick brag. And Choosing Texas came up on that. Like, that's when you've kind of crossed over some genre. It's that you're ending up on that station. That probably a lot of people like that song. I think it set the record for like number one on like Billboard country charts for like 11 consecutive weeks or something like that. It is a banger, certified. All right, well,
it found a way. Yeah. But yeah, I think this is one of our stronger drafts. I didn't draft anyone who plays at Middle Tennessee State, so I'm really proud of myself. And I think that overall, like, I don't think there's any embarrassment. I think everybody stays healthy and doesn't like have any crises off the field. I think all these guys are like at least top 20 guys. Like, if they're playing, they're producing.
Yeah. And surely we will look back on this in a few months and go, we are idiots. We are absolute idiots. That's the way this always works. All right, let's kick it to Roddy Jones. We discussed his bold Arch Manning take. I say that tongue in cheek, from a few months ago. Some ACC storylines and stories of being a two-sport guy at Georgia Tech. So here is Roddy Jones. I'm not excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is ESPN and SiriusXM's Roddy Jones, the pride of Stone Mountain, Georgia. Roddy, it's been fun getting to go on with you and Schick on Thursday on Sirius. I pride myself on being an off-season innings eater when it comes to, all things college football content, especially this time of year. That included last week discussing my SEC quarterback rankings. When you saw that I only had Arch at 3, how irate were you?
I was not irate at all, to be honest with you. I just wanted the explanation. Like, honestly, with any list that someone puts together, if there's logic behind it, I got no problem with it. I may disagree, but I got no problem with it. The fact that you had Trinidad 1 and Gunner 2, it didn't really bother me, because over the balance of the season, those guys were better than Arch. Now, I had the Cheez-It Bowl where Arch went off with like a bunch of ragtag, misfit toys against Michigan. He had the long run. He had an incredible touchdown pass over in the corner. He was great, especially down the stretch of that game. So I am biased by that. I saw it live and in person, but I had no problem with you having Arch at 3. I thought the logic behind it was sound.
So that's the full context of this. You had that game, and you said during that game on the call, I think it was after one of the long touchdown run he had, that he's going to be the Heisman Trophy favorite, which at the time, I'm sure you got a lot of pushback, and people are like, all right, we're doing this again. And then you see the way that it plays out. He's just behind CJ Carr in the early Heisman Trophy odds. A lot of people will still roll their eyes at that, but your take was pretty spot on, which at the time it might have felt really bold. How much did you hear from people after that? Because I saw the awful announcing article as well.
A little bit, honestly, dude, there's a lot of noise after every game, and particularly when you have two brands. There's a lot of noise on your social medias because whoever's losing at the time absolutely hates you. So yeah, it was just kind of a part of the noise. And to be honest, man, I felt like it was a bold statement, but I didn't feel like I was going out on a limb too much. The biggest name in the sport, and he was coming off of a season where they were obviously they just missed out on the playoff, but he finished really strong, and I thought he got better at a lot of the things he was criticized for early in the year. I thought he started playing more free. And honestly, he is an emotional player. Like when he is in the game with his legs, when he is showing his emotions outwardly, it rallies his teammates. He is much different than everyone else that we've seen with the last name in that regard. And so he started to play like that more late down the season. And so, yeah, I definitely heard some. To be honest, man, the people that you hear from usually don't watch as much or have the context that you do. But it was definitely a fun game to do. And we actually did Arch's first game, the first game that he appeared in a couple years ago when Quinn had the oblique against Texas San Antonio, UTSA. And so I feel like when we're in the building, Arch does really well. But so maybe that also sort of colors my view of what he'll be going into this year.
I was going to say maybe Sark sent you a text afterwards being like, man, look, we're trying to calm the hype here. We're not trying to get Arch all riled up in the same way.
Yeah. And then they go and they sign Cam Coleman and then calm down a little bit with the hype. Yeah, exactly. Man. He did not, but I don't even know if you heard it, man. There's so much stuff around Arch that it probably just, again, was a part of the noise.
That's fair. I was thinking about ACC quarterbacks because it's in one sense kind of a changing of the guard with Haynes King, Cade Klubnik, Tommy Castellanos, kind of these stalwarts of the ACC. They're gone, and obviously you still got someone like Darian Mensah, albeit with a new team, a new ACC team. You've got the ageless Kevin Jennings, who is going to be an all-time, oh my God, how is he still in school? And people turn on their TVs this fall. And then JKS at Cal. If I give you a non-Mensah ACC quarterback, and that's a key distinction there because Malachi Toney is the obvious answer if it's, a non-ACC player, non-ACC like Mensah guy. If I give you one of those, and maybe it's not even in that group, of someone who can make it to New York, who would you pick?
Oh, I would go with, if we're going quarterbacks, it's probably Kevin Jennings. If we're going non-quarterback, the obvious is Malachi Toney, but I would say Justice Haynes probably feels a little rich out of Georgia Tech, but I think he's poised to have a really good season. He obviously was having a really great year last year. I think he was, in the conversation to be the second best back in the country behind only Jeremiah Love for about the first half of the season, maybe a little more. And Georgia Tech, while they're retooling in a lot of areas, particularly on the offensive line, I think they are gearing this offense towards running the ball with he and Malachi Hosley. The question for those two is how are they going to split the carries? But I do think that I do think they'll have a good season. The question is Georgia Tech going to win enough for like a Heisman campaign? And that's the other thing. Oh, I forgot this guy. And this would be my answer. It'd be Isaac Brown out of Louisville. That would be the guy, because he has been fantastic. His entire career was awesome as a freshman, was really banged up as a sophomore, showed flashes when he was healthy. He is a home run hitter for everywhere on the field. And I do think Louisville can win enough where his stats will matter. And they will have some big stages. Starting with Ole Miss week 1, they've got SMU week 3. I've got the schedule here in front of me, and they've got some showdowns. They got Florida State a little bit later on. They'll play obviously Kentucky at the end of the year. But they've got some big name games that I think if he puts up big numbers in, then he will certainly take the national landscape by storm, and people will start to fall in love with just he is absolutely dynamic. So yeah, that would be the one.
Yeah, it's interesting because the ACC, it feels like it's Miami and everybody else. It's Mensah and everybody else when it comes to quarterbacks. And it almost feels like 2010s Clemson-ish with how they're being discussed. And obviously, if it plays out that way, then we can have different conversations. But would you take the field right now, like to win the ACC over Miami? Like, is it boring to just default to that and go, well, Miami's got Mensah and they've got Toney and Mark Fletcher coming back. They've kind of reloaded on the defensive line. Like, would you go that route, or would you say, you know what, when we think that this is going to happen, we think this is imminent, usually we're wrong?
I would take Miami, knowing that the second part of your statement is absolutely true. Like, Miami still has not won the league. It's since they've been in the ACC. They did not win the league last year. Duke did. And they were the most talented team a year ago. So while knowing all of that, I would still take Miami because of the talent. But if it were to go wrong for Miami, number one, this is a program that has had its stumbles over the course of Mario Cristobal's time there. And even though they had that run to the national championship game last year, 2 years ago with Cam Ward, they go into Syracuse with an opportunity to play for an ACC championship. They blow a 21-point lead, and they end up on the outside looking in. They should have made the playoff that year if they just take care of business up in Central New York. Last year, obviously, you had the SMU game, you had the Louisville game. Those were two games that Louisville was probably a little bit closer to them talent-wise, but this was not the SMU team that we had 2 years ago, and Kevin Jennings was really banged up coming into that game. He played phenomenal. There were mistakes made both by Carson Beck with the interceptions, although one of the interceptions absolutely not on him. The other one, the one in overtime, was debatable. But if Marquise Lightfoot doesn't hit Kevin Jennings after a whistle right after the ball was snapped, they blew the play dead. Marquise Lightfoot decks Kevin Jennings up on a fourth down. That gives SMU the first down, and SMU goes in to tie it, and then they end up obviously winning in overtime. If that doesn't happen, then Miami wins that game. So Miami has had its stumbles over the course of Mario Cristobal's time there. And that offensive line is going to look a lot different. It was an offensive line that really led that offense. They returned basically three starters. One of the guys is a rotational guy, Samson Okunlola. Oh, I guess you consider him or Ryan Rodriguez the rotational guy, but they kind of rotated together. So the tackles are going to be new, though. You're likely going to start a freshman at left tackle. And while that skill position group with Mark Fletcher in the backfield, Gerard Pringle in the backfield, Malachi Toney, they added Cooper Barkate, who was part of that Darian Minta acquisition, basically. Their skill position group is absolutely loaded. I just want to see Miami mature a little bit. And maybe this will be the team that does it because they are incredibly talented.
You've been asked this question a lot throughout the offseason. How significant is the loss of Buster Faulkner for Georgia Tech, and how monumental is it for Florida in year one under John Summerall?
Yeah, it's funny because I think it's pretty big, but you talk to Brent Key and he sort of downplays it because the architects of that offense, or some of the people that were the architects of that offense, along with Buster Faulkner, are still around. So I think the offense is going to look fairly similar. George Godsey coming in from the Ravens organization is interesting. He and Brent Key are really close. He has not had a ton of success calling plays, but I do expect the offense to look structurally similar to what you saw before. And in terms of what Florida's getting, I think you're getting, number one, you're going to have an identity running the football with Jaden Ball, which was obviously going to be very good for you. You're not going to see as much quarterback run as you did with Haynes King, and that's probably a good thing. Not only because of Aaron Philo's skill set, but also I do think it'll make them a little bit less predictable and maybe more efficient doing other things, particularly on third and shorts and in the red zone. I do think Georgia Tech at times was a little bit of a one-trick pony in those scenarios. You kind of saw it in the bowl game where they basically took the quarterback run out of the game, and they weren't able in those condensed areas to turn it into points. So Buster Faulkner is certainly going to bring that. You're going to get a lot of different formations to basically run the same stuff. It's going to be counter. It's going to be stuff off of counter. You're going to have shifts and motions. Eric Singleton Jr. is another really big acquisition because I don't think Auburn really figured out how to use him well last year. Now, Auburn had a lot of issues around just that position, including at quarterback. But I think Eric Singleton Jr. is going to be a really good piece for Florida as well to add to the guys that they already have. So I'm really excited to see what Buster Faulkner is going to do. I do have some questions about Aaron Philo. Flashes have been great. Sample size is limited, and there have been some questions in what he's shown. But I think the potential is there to have a really challenging offense to defend in year one for Florida.
Let's talk Philo because I'm right there with you. There are some good moments, and obviously the 2-week stretch that he has, the Miami and NC State stretch a couple of years ago, they only get him that one start last year. It's an FCS start, and you're kind of like, man, it would have been nice if he had gotten more reps, but because Haynes King is this durable guy, like he just didn't necessarily get out there in the way that you would have liked to. I'm kind of fascinated with him because I think he's still a little bit raw, and he's probably a little bit more raw than what people are gonna realize. But it's year 3 in that system. What do you think he does this year? And that is assuming that he's able to win this job and fend off, Tramel Jones Jr.
Yeah, and I think that's a big if. I do think his familiarity in the system helps because there's a lot of moving parts pre-snap that you have to manage, and so that is going to help. That is going to help him in his pursuit of winning the job. Look, the guy can throw the football. He's one of the most prolific passers in the history of Georgia high school football, which has some very prolific passers. Like I think he broke like the Trevor Lawrence's record exactly for pass yards in a career. Guys like Gunnar Stockton are up there. Like there have been some incredible passers, and Aaron Philo is right up there. And so the ability to throw the ball is there. I do think there's going to be a speed to the game and a quarterback maturity that I just have questions about. We just haven't seen it. And so there will be some mistakes. How does he bounce back from those mistakes? But he's a big, strong quarterback that can he can throw on the run. He had a great throw a couple years ago on the run to the back of the corner of the end zone. That may have been last year, and my years are running together. But it's shown the ability to throw on the run. And I just have questions about how he handles all of the moments that you're going to have in the SEC, particularly for a guy who was not raised in an SEC program, if that makes sense. Like he hasn't seen what it's like to go on the road in some of these environments, which are tough. So I guess I have as many questions as anybody. I certainly see the talent, and I do see the upside, and I see the potential if it's especially early on, if it's an offense built around Jaden Baugh. If it's an offense built around easy RPO throws where he can kick the ball out to Eric Singleton or some of those weapons on the outside, and then play action, roll out, shots down the field, stuff like that, stuff that gives him easy ways to sort of get used to the speed of the game. I do see there being a recipe for success there. But I think a lot of it's going to come down to Florida's ability to run the ball because I don't think you want to put it all on Philo, especially early this year.
Yeah, surroundings are certainly good. They've definitely gone all in with making sure that it's not going to be a lack of surroundings that's going to doom him. If he's going to fail, it's going to be on him. Take me back to your recruitment at Georgia Tech because, like Philo, you're all over the Georgia high school record books. You get drafted by the White Sox in the 39th round, but you choose Georgia Tech before your senior season of high school, and I can't help but think my guy Jeff Collins played a little bit of a role in that.
He did.
Yeah, my guy. If you didn't play football at Georgia Tech, would you have played elsewhere, or were you going to go to the minor leagues?
No, I was pretty set on going to play college football. I loved college football. I loved the environments. I loved I grew up in Atlanta. Like the front page of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution for about half the year was a college football player. So that's what I fell in love with. And so if I didn't play at Georgia Tech, I was going to try and go elsewhere. I would have probably gone to Clemson. But Georgia Tech was going to allow me to play both football and baseball. I got recruited under Chan Gailey. Danny Hall, who was there up until last year as the baseball coach, was the baseball coach then as well. And he was going to let me play both. And then it didn't quite work out that way. Coach, Gailey gets fired. Coach Johnson comes in. And so it was a little more challenging than initially we thought. But I likely would not have gone to the minor straight out of high school because I had ability to play football somewhere else. So I was fortunate. And I ended up playing 2 years of baseball. Not well, but I ended up playing 2 years of baseball at Tech and had a great time. Played with some great players. We had some really good teams.
I always wonder what that's like when you're dead set on playing football and the MLB draft is going on. Like, do you make it appointment viewing to watch all the rounds of it? Like, are you just going to get a text or a call? I guess at that time you're getting a call.
Yeah.
Saying
dude,
hey, you just got drafted 30th round.
That thing wasn't televised at all in 2007. So, it was basically so we had signability conversations leading up to the draft with a few teams. And essentially they tell you, hey, look, here's where we have you slotted. Here's what that would likely look like money-wise. Would you sign for that? And the answer for me, they were saying somewhere between the 7th and 13th round. That the money was, I don't even know what that money is today, but it's certainly not the NIL money that these guys are getting. And back then it just wasn't enough money to turn down the opportunity to go and play both. And so, I kind of told him, hey, look, I'm not going to sign if it's in those ranges. I'll go to college and play. So, we appreciate the look. And then the White Sox said, okay, that's fine. We'll probably draft you anyway. And then if you change your mind, we'll talk and we'll sign you for above whatever slot they drafted me in. And so I get drafted in 3rd and 4th round. We were actually down in Orlando at Disney. And I think my parents were in a timeshare, meeting when I got the call. or we were in some hotel room. Yeah, I think we were there. But anyway, I pick up the phone and I say, hey, this is the scout that I was talking to from the White Sox. We just drafted you in the 39th round. We'll give you a call in a couple days and talk about sort of the logistics of it, and then you can make your decision. And it was a pretty tight timeline. I don't remember exactly when the draft was, but I was set to go to Georgia Tech second week of June. And so I think the draft was like the first week of June. So we only had a couple days to decide. But I kind of knew that I was dead set on doing it. I don't know what it's like for these guys nowadays. I mean, they got NIL contracts on one side waiting, they got, the draft on the other, and then and they're on campus a lot earlier than we were. So I don't even know how it'll work now.
Would you recommend doing both? Like, it probably depends on position that you're playing, like how high your draft is. Like every situation is different, but like having gone through it and kind of seeing, like how tough it is to juggle that, especially with the commitments to spring football now. Like, I don't know. I look at this and I'm like, hey, play as many sports as you can. Like,
Yeah.
I understand it's like specialization. There's a lot that's been made of it, but like having gone through it and seen like the time commitment, like how do you feel about someone that steps into that world and says like, I just want to do everything when I show up and just kind of figure it out after I get to college?
I will say, I will preface it by saying I don't regret doing it. It taught me a lot about time management. It taught me a lot about just the ability to suffer through, and I say suffer as it wasn't like I was trudging through every day, but it was a grind. Like it was a consistent grind for those 2 years. And it was even more of a grind during summer because I was playing summer ball. I had an internship. I was doing workouts, and I had school. So it was a grind. I would not recommend anyone do it because I think at that point in time, you pick your best sport and you give it your all. That is past the time of like generalization is great. Like at some point, you got to nail down on the finer points of an individual sport. And when you get to that level, I think that's about the time. So unless you are just an unbelievable athlete, like if Deion Sanders were to come around and he can just sort of show up, roll it out there, and hit 300, steal 40 bases, and then go out and lock down the number one receiver on the other team, I wouldn't generally recommend it. And the guys that I've seen do it, we had a couple do it at Georgia Tech. We've seen a guy or two try and do it around the country. Guys that generally do it are not great at both. And so I feel like you are sacrificing being great at one of them, whichever one's the better one, in order to sort of generalize in multiples. And we've seen lacrosse guys do it too. I mean, Jordan Faison was doing it for a while. But at some point you are sacrificing both of them and not really reaching your potential in either one.
Not to disrespect Chan Gailey, who was the coach that you committed to and played for in your first year when you redshirted, but take me back to when Paul Johnson gets the job and goes, hey, Roddy, like, we're going to run the flex bone triple option and we're running the rock like 50 times a game. That had to be like, oh my God, this is going to be incredible. I know you got to, learn a new scheme, but that's a running back's dream.
Yeah, it was really cool to learn it. Now, when we were kind of showed the highlights of, hey, this is what position you're going to play, and we were showing guys from Navy, I was showing slot backs from Navy who were catching passes and getting pitches and seeing on. They didn't quite lay out like, hey, look, the most carries you'll ever have in a game is 13, and more likely it's like 5 or 6 on the high end. But it was really exciting to be a part of an offense that was going to create as many issues as that one did. And so there were a couple of conversations that Coach Johnson probably had that were more important than me. Joshua Nesbitt was a big time recruit coming out of Georgia. He had a lot of those records that Deshaun Watson broke, and then Trevor Lawrence broke in the state of Georgia throwing the ball. Convincing him to stay was a priority. Jonathan Dwyer was a priority. He was a top 100 recruit in the country. And so getting those guys was more important than me. But when he came in and we were switching offenses, there was a lot of, I think a lot of people were uneasy. They didn't know what it meant for them, but we ended up being pretty good. And so that cures a lot of concerns when you end up being as good as we were year one, and then especially year two.
Why'd you save all your best runs for Georgia, and how much do you still hear about 2008?
All the time. I hear about it. Honestly, man, like I attribute a lot of what's happened since then to that game. That was my redshirt freshman year. It was the first time we'd beaten Georgia in 7 years. And so it meant a lot to people because we were down at halftime. We came back and won. And it made me one of the more recognizable names for Georgia Tech for the next 3 seasons. And that's sort of the thing that that bothers me about the portal is just like my experience. I had a great game my freshman year at Georgia Tech against Georgia, my redshirt freshman year. And then I stayed the next 3 years. I never topped 100 yards in a game after that, rushing. I certainly never had the carries. That was my 13 carry game. Never had the carries that I had in that game. And so, and some would say it was all downhill from there. But because of that game, I was a player that a lot of people got to know over the next 3 years. And I had a really, I would say a solid career. And I'm very proud of what we did, what I did and what we did those next 3 years. But if the transfer portal had been around and someone had said, hey, look, you coming off that 200-yard game at Georgia, we'll offer you twice what Georgia Tech will offer you. And then you leave and go somewhere else. And if I'd had the same last 3 years somewhere else that I did at Georgia Tech, I would have been forgotten about. And I likely would not be here talking to you. Like I wouldn't be on ESPN. I don't know if I'd have been welcome on ACC Network when it launched. So there's just a lot of tentacles that happen after that, but I would have had more money. So maybe that would have kept me warm. But it was a magical day. And the interesting backstory to that game is that we went in there a little bit thin at the slot back position, the position that I played, the A back position. And then one of the other guys who was sort of a speed guy like me got banged up early in that game. So I ended up being the guy who took all of the pitches. And so, Connor, that's honestly why it happened. Like some of it was just luck, because the two healthy A-backs that we had was me at just under 200 pounds, who could run a little bit, and Lucas Cox, who was the brother of Mike Cox. He's a natural fullback. He's about 230. And so anytime an option play was called, Luke went to the block side, I went to the pitch side. And in the way Georgia was playing, we got the ball in the perimeter a lot. So a lot of it was luck, man. I was just the lucky recipient.
I thought you were going to say you're just trying to give it to Mark Richt for not recruiting you.
We have talked about that since then. The fact that they came in very late in the process. Georgia was very honest with me through the process. He's like, look, we like you, but we like these other 4 guys more. We think we're going to get 2 of them. So we're going to wait until those guys decide. I said, okay, cool, fair. And so I went and committed to Georgia Tech. Actually, interestingly enough, the running backs coach who recruited me for most of that left during the process, and Kirby Smart ended up coming over as the running backs coach at Georgia before he hopped over to the defensive side. So or he started recruiting me. I think he was the running backs coach. I could be wrong about that. But anyway, they jumped in late. They ended up not getting the 2 of the guys they wanted. They got Caleb King. They wanted Jonathan Dwyer, who ended up coming to Tech with us. And so it ended up being sort of both of us kind of wanting to give it to Georgia. Although there were so many guys from Georgia on that team, and we hadn't beat them in forever, that there were a lot of guys with that kind of motivation.
I have the dumbest question that you'll be asked all week, so apologies in advance. Like, this is a dumb question, but my brain just can't get it out of. I have to ask. When you would enjoy a night out in Atlanta.
Yeah.
No, I'm not make of that what you will. It could just be going down to a local restaurant, something like that. And when you were in school, did you ever say yeah, my name is Roddy and I play football, and have someone think you were Roddy White?
100%. Still happens, honestly. Dude, I'll introduce myself. Not as much recently, because Roddy White is sort of fading from people's memories a little bit. He's just not, he's not playing for the Falcons. But I'll go and I'll say, hey, hi, my name's Roddy. And they'll say, Roddy White? No, he's 6'3" and $63 million richer than probably more than that than I am. So yes, it happens all the time. It happened more back then because obviously the Falcons were very good. And then I would say my name's Roddy Jones, and they'd sort of look at me like it's a mixture of Roddy White and Julio Jones. So I don't know where to put you here. Who am I confusing you with? I'm not really sure. So yeah, during that, the real MVP of it all is Wes Durham, who very rarely got Roddy Jones, Roddy White, and Julio Jones mixed up over the course of his broadcast. It happened once or twice, but I believe that overlap would have happened. Julio got drafted, so only a couple years, but then we worked together. So it's been a challenge for Wes, or we have challenged him with our names over the last probably 15 years.
You never had to go to your birth name though, like your full birth name. For the people that don't know, can you say your full birth name?
Yeah.
And because if that's you as a broadcaster, like I think it takes on like a different sort of meaning, and you definitely would have never been confused for anybody else.
No, my full name is Roderick Ronaldo Jones.
It's great.
Thank you. I'm named after my dad, so you can thank him, or maybe my grandmother. But if I was Roderick Jones, like I feel like I should have been a doctor to be Roderick. Like that's a person that needs to be taken seriously. Roddy's a guy that can call college football games on a Saturday. It's just a different feel, you know. If Roderick Jones pops up, I'd have to be stiff, I feel like, and represent the name in a higher way.
R. Jones.
That's a good one. That's a good. I mean, look, I if I was an author, that would have been the go-to. R. Jones.
That's a good point.
Or maybe I should just transition or become Roddy R. Jones. It feels like the middle initial. It worked for Stephen A. Smith. Maybe that helps elevate you.
Roddy R. Jones. I like that. When you write a book, definitely put that as the the author. I think that makes a lot of sense. This has been great. Let's get you out of here with some rapid fire. Just 5 questions. First thing that comes to mind. Does that work for you?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Speaking of things that you've been asked about, you're going to have a new booth partner this fall because Mark Jones retired. Guy's named Jones. You don't have to share who that'll be just yet because I know we're still waiting on announcements and stuff like that. But who would be your dream play-by-play person to work with, and it could be living or dead?
I think you'd have to go with one of the legends. So I would say Keith Jackson, just because he sounds like college football to me. Like that is the voice that I grew up with. So yeah, I'll go Keith Jackson.
That's the correct answer. Yeah. That's good. The varsity is overrated, underrated, or properly rated?
Absolutely overrated. Unbelievably overrated. And I don't even know how it's rated, but whatever it's rated, it's overrated.
I had one of the more disappointing burgers of my life there a year ago and thought to myself, look, I get it. It's an institution. Somebody's going to tell me who listens to this, I got the wrong thing or something like that. But I was like, this is the burger. This is like high school lunch type of burger. It was not very good.
Connor, let me tell you, you didn't get the wrong thing. This is if people want to come after me for it, come after me. I am born and raised in Atlanta. I've gone to the varsity. I think my first time was probably when I was 5. There's not much on there that you're going to walk away with satisfied, and you're certainly not going for the customer service. It is only to say that you went there and for the hats.
That's true. That's very, very true. Okay. The SEC is overrated, underrated, or properly rated?
I would say generally probably slightly overrated, but amongst the reasonable folk, I think it's properly rated. The environments are awesome. The teams are very, very, very good. I do think the demise of the SEC is, while people are having their moment, sort of dancing on the graves of the SEC's national champions. I mean, the 3 years that they've missed the national championship game, you're a play away. So I don't think the league is quite at the alarm level that people are. So I will say amongst the reasonable people, properly rated. Amongst the zealots, definitely overrated.
What's your go-to entertainment on a flight?
I'd probably say I usually just pop on a movie. Honestly, Connor, the reason I'm struggling with this is because I sleep on planes. I am a fantastic plane sleeper. And so usually by the time we take off, your boy's knocked out. And I wake up somewhere, depending on the length of the flight, hour and a half in. So if it's shorter than an hour and a half flight, there's no entertainment needed. Your boy's knocked out.
How? Give us the secret, because I think it's impossible. And I said that even before I had a toddler that I had to manage on a flight. But I think it's one of the more underrated things. Like if I could just snap my fingers and be able to sleep on planes, I would do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah. To be honest, I don't know. I have been blessed or maybe cursed throughout my life with being able to fall asleep very easily. It is great in situations like planes. It was terrible in situations like class because like the ability to sleep easily does not discriminate. When you are just the slightest bit, not even super tired, it's just like calm and still. When you are the slightest bit calm and still, the nodding starts to happen. And so whether it was in, I didn't take that many calculus classes, but let's just say calculus. Whether it's calculus or management statistics or a flight to Utah, doesn't matter. then the desire to go to sleep will be there, and the ability to go to sleep will be there. So, to be honest, I don't know. I just get a window seat. I go to the bathroom before I get on the plane, so I don't have to get up, and I zonk out.
Talking about your struggles in school, it says the 3-time ACC all academic team and recipient of an MBA. Like, okay, no big deal. Yeah, school I'm sure was really hard for you. Yeah.
Staying awake certainly was.
Okay, last one for you. Your Arch is a Heisman favorite take. Technically wasn't an offseason take because you were saying that during bowl season, but give me your boldest offseason take prediction, thing that you've just been going, man, maybe this team's getting disrespected in the offseason, but just thing that you've been coming back to that you're like, hey, I know I'm going to bust this out at ACC Media Days and it's going to make the rounds.
It is not ACC related, but my take, BYU will win the Big 12. I think BYU is the best team in the Big 12.
No way.
Honestly,
I love it.
I thought that pre-Sorsby, pre the whole Sorsby deal, because of number one, what they're bringing back. Number two, the culture of that place is really fired up when Kalani Sitake came back. I think this is the most talented BYU team that Kalani Sitake will have had. I mean, LJ Martin was a Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year last year. Keita Luave comes over from Cal. They've got probably 4 top 2-day picks on that defense. LJ Martin's likely another one. They've got questions at receiver, but that offensive line's mostly intact. And I think Bear Bachmeier takes a step. And even if Bear Bachmeier struggles some, they've just brought in a 5-star freshman, and Ryder Lyons coming in to back him up. So my take is that and they don't play Texas Tech in the regular season, so it comes down to one game if those two meet. So I'm going to go BYU wins the Big 12.
You are preaching to the choir on that one. I've been saying that for months. It's BYU's year. I picked BYU to beat Alabama in a playoff game, and Alabama fans, they ripped me. They ripped me pretty good on social media. But love it, Roddy. We're gonna have to do this again. Like I said, it's been fun getting to chop it up with you and Matt each Thursday on SiriusXM. We'll do this again in season, and I'm sure you'll have a bold in season take that'll make the rounds, and you'll be like, "Hey, Arch for Heisman. See, how do you like me now?"
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully, it's funny because when we throw out these takes, it almost makes you root for the thing that you said a little bit. But again, like if Texas is not, if Arch is not in the Heisman conversation this year, and if he's not a front runner, then Texas is not having the season that they need to have, and people will be much more concerned about that than my Arch take.
Yeah, nobody will go back to that. I won't bring that up at all. No, you're in the clear on that. Roddy, thanks, man. We'll do it again soon.
Yeah, thanks, Connor.
All right, well, lad of the week. You want to start? Or you want me to start?
You got it, man.
All right, so this happened about a week ago, actually, but it was after we had recorded, so I haven't had an opportunity to address this. But yeah, by now everybody's pretty well aware that Jordan Rodgers, Cole Kubelik, Tom Hart, the three amigos, have been broken up. And that sounds a lot more negative than it actually is, but that trio is not going to be calling games together on SEC Network. The SEC Saturday Night crew is no longer in that role. Kind of TBD on where all of them are going to end up. I do know that, they're all going to be just fine. They are all going to be just fine. And those three are all going to be set up very, very well. And last year when Jordan was doing like the Jesse Palmer, replacement stuff, when Jesse's off doing bachelor stuff or whatever, you're like, all right, this kind of makes sense that Jordan's going to be elevated. And it's not that they haven't been, doing their own thing at different times, but it's a massive bummer. And I don't know how much people realize this, but that trio was together for 9 years. Okay. And I had the privilege of shadowing them and spending some time with them back in 2021 when they were in year 5. And at that point, they were tied with the Joel Klatt, Gus Johnson, Jenny Taft trio as the longest running trio in college football announcing. Like, it just does not happen in college football where you get the same trio. You might have like a color guy and a play-by-play that have been together for a long time or something like that, but having a trio all together is very, very unique. And spending that time with them that I did back in 2021, like in addition to having them on the show, but getting to see like kind of how they operate within their respective spaces was such an incredible experience. And it, for those who have heard me speak about those guys, like, I've developed an even greater appreciation for what they have to do. Like, I got to spend time with each of them individually and then was able to like be in a production room with them on that Friday night. And then, a couple hours before the game, I was able to hear all of their interactions that they have over like their mic and their operating system that they use to be able to communicate within the games and stuff. I don't even know if they knew that I was like listening to that part of like what they were, what they were saying to one another. Like it's kind of on the record, kind of not. But I essentially had like a 4 to 5 hour like earpiece in to hear anything that they were saying. And it's really incredible. And I just don't think it should be taken for granted. And it sucks that people don't understand the chemistry that goes into building these things. And while I do respect that all three still want to get to bigger and better places, like those guys should be on better games, man. Like they should be on better games and not just, watching this game against Mississippi State, Mizzou on a Saturday night that like is with these teams are out of contention. Like those guys deserve to have bigger voices. And I think part of their frustration, at least, this is what I've gathered, is that they have watched others that have been given opportunities to rise who like, I frankly, I don't think they have been outperformed. I don't like, I know I might be a little bit biased in saying this, but I think those three with what they do and what they offer to a given broadcast is like exactly what I would draw up for a college football broadcast. And I know like the people that have listened to SEC Saturday Night over the years have really learned like what that's like. I mean, let's not forget like Brent Musburger used to do SEC Saturday Night and it was nothing. All right. Like he's a legend of the game. And you have people like Brent Musburger and Jesse Palmer who are like bigger names that have done it, but they don't have the chemistry that those three guys did. And so it sucks to see that people in charge have decided, we're going to break this up and kind of left them out to dry because agents just are going to do what agents do. And they're going to announce, this guy has this opportunity first. And so it looks like they're being broken up and like that they're not even like they're like Tom and Cole are getting demoted and Jordan's getting promoted. It's like, it's not like that, but it got me fired up and not in a good way because I respect their craft so much. Okay. And like, I just think that we've been very fortunate as SEC fans to get to listen to those guys on a Saturday night in games that I think they're kind of better than. Like if we're being 100% honest. So I'm going to miss having the three of them on the call. I'm sure we'll have all three of them, individually on the show in the very near future here. I mean, we had Cole and Tom on a few months ago, but yeah, like those guys deserve a salute and they certainly deserve the love of college football fans everywhere. And I know that they're going to be still on our airwaves this fall. It's just going to be different.
Man, I joked with you off air about like, wow, one of these finally isn't a bummer. I feel myself just as bummed out here. You're right. I'm like thinking about all this stuff that it's like they've been right there. You talked about kind of the voice of certain teams and how like, being a little bit younger sounded. And it's like, if I sit here and I'm 31, you said 9 years. So 22, I was just kind of getting out of college and everything. It's crazy to see how they've kind of been together this whole time. And like, I'm a big believer in how people treat people that are kind of below them, like really defines their character. And those guys are on-air guys. But I've talked about this at media days where I think the SEC network guys really set the tone with how the conference is covered and how everybody treats each other. And me being a guy who's kind of been around the SEC, but not ever really being on air, like not really having a face or a name. The first time I met like all of those guys was awesome. Like they made sure to, firm handshake, listen to the pod, do all this stuff. And having worked around so many people on television, that was really unique. It was really unique that they went out of their way to make me feel welcome in the conference and be like, kind of like, hey, informally, like you belong here. Like I'm going to spend the time, talk to you, get to know you a little bit. And like I said, we don't really, again, me having covered so many leagues and different sports, like it just goes unheralded that they have made SEC Media Days in this conference a place that is fun. And it doesn't feel like they're really tiers to anything. It feels like you can just walk up and talk to one of them, assuming they're not like doing a live hit or something, obviously. But a lot of the times being on air is seen as this big wafty thing. And it's cool to see that they bring the same vibe off air as they do on air, where it's like, oh, you just walked into your buddy's house and he's got a couple friends over and we're all just going to, have a beer and watch this late game and kind of joke about how weird and fun it is while still keeping on topic and not just kind of, acting like we're bored or too good for it. So shout out to those guys, man. What an era.
Not fake at all. Trust me. Like guys, I would tell you if I thought they were fake. There are people in this business that are fake, that are very different on air compared to off. And like those three guys are not that at all. What you see is what you get. They are all incredibly funny in their own unique way. They all are so knowledgeable about football. And like even Tom, like some of the stuff that Tom sets up, it goes so underrated. And he's just such a great point guard. And so I'm bummed. Like I am really bummed. As someone that loves being able to sit down on Saturday night and lock into some of these games that I know like maybe aren't going to get talked about on a national show. But I know that with our audience and people that come here, part of the reason that they come here is because I can sit down and tell you what happened with Mizzou and Kentucky. All right. I can tell you if this guy, Wan'Dale Robinson, is having a breakout moment and is worthy of being discussed nationally as the most versatile player in college football. Like I can tell you these things because I'm informed by people like that. And they do a great job of storytelling in the SEC.
Wan'Dale's too big of a name. We've seen too much Dane Key to That's the thing. We're not talking about the good kid. We've seen lots of Kentucky football.
That was a great weekend. Like I'm looking back on that weekend, it was so fun because I got to do that story, and then like the day before, like I was fortunate enough where like Kentucky, I went to like the Kentucky facility and did a story on Wan'Dale and Liam Cohen that weekend too, and established like some really good relationships there, and it was kind of cool to see like their operation. Then got to do like the SEC network stuff, as well, and was very fortunate. What would have thought of like doing two like in-depth actual real journalism pieces and like having a place that is willing to say, hey, we value this. But anyway, those two guys are great. Those three guys are great. Two guys. I was thinking of Wan'Dale and Liam when I said that. Those three guys are great. And they're going to be just fine. They're going to be just fine. I wish they were all going to be just fine together and just getting to do better games.
Yeah, that's the thing. More things, like time goes on, it's hard to keep things together, especially in sports. And yeah, especially with kind of three guys like that. So back to the happy. All right. Back to the
happy. Need this though. We need this. It's the yin and the yang, you know?
Yeah, exactly. The yin yang twins, they call us. Anyway, so that being said, right? My last group of the week is the entire beautiful nation of Mexico. Got to watch their World Cup game last night with my favorite Mexican, Andrea, and it was just a great time watching that game get rain delayed for like an hour, and it was like every second, every minute, the crowd noise just got longer or louder. Like that's one of the few that I've talked about. Oh, you hear Mo Bamba, you hear Colin Baton Rouge, you hear whatever in your favorite stadium, and there's nothing like it in the world. And seeing in Estadio Azteca this just crowd that I actually watched the broadcast on Telemundo, and my Spanish too was really being put to test, and I was going kind of back and forth, and the way that they said like, okay, well, we're just stuck here. It was so funny. Like after the game, they were like, well, hope you like football because we're stuck here. We cannot go home. Our cars are in that parking garage. There are people. We couldn't get in the road. So we're just going to hang out with you kind of like on the desk. And that was super cool. And so, yeah, they obviously beat Ecuador last night 2-0. The second half was a bit of a snoozer as Mexico controlled the first half and then kind of played a little bit of keep away. They have advanced to this kind of point in the tournament several straight years, so I don't want to take away from that, but the tournament format changed to where they're able to get there via knockout game, which is always a lot more high drama. Getting that type of environment in a home environment in Mexico City. Mexico City is an underratedly large city. If you ever want to really get your mind blown, Connor, look at like the American cities in terms of where they are in the world. We have small cities in America, and Mexico City is massive. And to watch all the people come out and just turn, like, it's the effect that like a Lincoln, Nebraska or an Auburn, Alabama would have in Mexico City, where it's like everyone from around Mexico City has now swarmed this like it's college football. So just shout out to them, man. I'm really hoping for both, honestly, all three host nations. I have a little bit less faith in Canada, but I am really hoping for all three kind of North American nations to make it very far. And yeah, man, vamos, si se puede.
Claire's favorite daycare teacher has been wearing a Mexico jersey for Mexico kit. We call it a kit. I don't know. You know soccer better than I do. I think for 3 weeks. I think every day for 3 weeks. Just show up. Miss Maria rocking the Mexico jersey. All right. World Cup. She's all in. Very dialed in. Very dialed in. Yeah, seeing the scene there. Incredible. Incredible. You're right. It would be kind of cool to see all the host nations get like a deep run like that. By the time people are listening to this, though, they'll know about the US, so we won't say anything there. We won't get cold take on that at all. But yeah, Dos a Cero. Is that gonna happen again? No. See,
yeah,
I know some things.
It's interesting, man, because like Team USA was really kind of not really struggling, but they weren't really popping coming into the tournament. And then, the lineup that beat Paraguay so bad really hadn't played together like at all. I think it was their first time starting together for the US. So could be good, could be bad. We'll see. There's a little bit of a health issue for Team USA as well, but I don't know, man. Mexico's looking strong. There's a couple of teams, shout out Germany, that didn't go as far as I think people thought. So this format, obviously, we're all American centric here, but this format has been so legendary where you have 3 host nations. They're all playing home games. Like people are getting to experience random places of America. This has been it's really turned me on to soccer in a way that I never thought was possible, even more so than going to the Arsenal game and everything. So yeah, it's been a great viewing experience. I can't wait for more.
Again, people will know the U.S. result by the time that this comes out. So don't want to get cold take on that, but yeah, nonetheless, be cool to see all the U.S. advance very, very far. I'm sure I won't get cold take. All right, that's a pod. Thank you if you have not subscribed, I shouldn't thank you if you haven't subscribed. You should subscribe to The Next Round on YouTube, where you can find all of our content. We have interviews, we have our shorts that are going up, and you can subscribe to The Next Round on all forms of social media. You can see all of our content coming out. We still have all of the OG Kickoff stuff on our Instagram as well. Please go follow that. Follow us on Twitter @CJOguerra, @GoSoHard. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.